back to the Gridiron Expert. We're continuing our Group of 5 conference recaps, and today we're breaking down the Mountain West Conference. We have some very close races here in the Mountain West, so we're going to go ahead and start in the Mountain Division, where I have Boise State winning the division, much like they did last year. This is the Boise State team that will once again be very dominant and very tough to beat for any team that goes up against them. They return 6 starters on the offensive side of the ball and 10 on defense, and that's the kicker, because usually we kind of define Boise State as an offensive-minded team, usually very dominant on offense, which they will be this year with quarterback Brett Rippon and Alex Madison. But you've also got a defense this year that has 10 returning starters, only losing 1 linebacker who was good enough to go in the first round of last year's NFL draft. So this is a very dominant Boise State team. Last year winning the Mountain West, just going 11-3 or going 11-3. Only losses coming to Washington State, Virginia, and Fresno State, who they then got revenge on in the Mountain West Conference Championship game. So this is a Boise State team that I think will once again be very, very tough, and I have them at 10-2, only losing 1 conference game, and will once again vie for a spot in a New Year's Six Bowl. And then I've got Wyoming right behind them. I've got a tie here for second place between Wyoming and Utah State, both at 8-4, both at 6-2 in conference play. Now, Wyoming is one of those teams that a lot of people just think isn't going to do too well this year because they lost Josh Allen. And that is a big blow. Anytime you lose a quarterback that good enough to go in the top 10 of the NFL draft, that does hurt. But they return 9 offensive starters and 8 defensive starters, a defense that is not getting a lot of attention but will be very, very tough, led by Carl Granderson along that defensive line, and Logan Wilson, their leading tackler from last year, leading that linebacking core. So yes, they do lose Josh Allen, and they'll have to replace him with either Nick Smith or Tyler Vanderwall. I would think it would go to Nick Smith. I know a lot of people think it could go to Vanderwall. Either way, I think the Cowboys are going to be just fine because it's still a team that's going to be very tough, very defensive-minded. So any issues they have at the quarterback position will get fixed later on, probably a couple games into the season, and will once again be a threat in the Mountain West. I do have them beating Utah State in the regular season, so that's why they own the edge over the Aggies. But Utah State returning 18 starters this year as well, so tons of experience here in this Mountain Division. They got Jordan Love coming back at quarterback, so a dual threat quarterback there. They just went 6-7 last year, losing that devastating bowl game to New Mexico State. And they do have a tough schedule. They have Michigan State and BYU on the schedule, so it's not going to be easy for the Aggies, but I certainly think that they can improve on their numbers from last year and once again be a threat in the Mountain Division. They averaged 30 points per game last year and just gave up 27 points per game last year as well on the defensive side of the ball. So if they can improve those numbers on both ends, watch out for the Aggies this year. And you've got Colorado State. Once again, you can see a fine line here between the teams that really could contend for that division title and then teams that I really think are going to have a rebuilding year or are going to struggle this year. And we'll start with Colorado State. 5-7, 4-4 in conference play. Mike Bobo has done a great job with his Rams team, except for the fact that he's going into year 4 and he's gone 7-6 in the previous 3 seasons. So I think the pressure is on just trying to maybe break through that 7, get past that 7-win mark. Get to 8 wins, get to 9 wins, and try to compete in this Mountain Division. But unfortunately, this is not going to be the year for Colorado State to do that because they lost their biggest playmakers as well. Nick Stevens at quarterback, Dalen Dawkins at running back, and Michael Gallup at the wide receiver position. They lost their biggest offensive targets, their biggest offensive playmakers, all gone this year. They only returned 4 offensive starters for the Rams this year, and a brutal schedule that sees them play Colorado, Arkansas, and Florida in 3 consecutive weeks. So this is a Colorado State team that I think will probably end up going 5-7 if Mike Bobo does a great job and this team does better than we expect. Maybe they crack bowl eligibility, get to 6 wins, win a bowl game, you're back at 7-6. But I think this is going to be a bit of a rebuilding year for the Rams, and hopefully Mike Bobo isn't going to be put on the hot seat for this. And then you got Air Force in New Mexico rounding out the Mountain Division, 5-7, 3-9. Air Force, a team that went 5-7 last year. I could see them making a bowl game. I really could, because I like their offense, and they have a very, very solid defense, but a tough schedule once again. And I'm just curious to see what the mindset is for this Falcons team. Got them at 5-7, and then New Mexico going 3-9. That's not a huge surprise. They're breaking in a new quarterback. They've only got 2 offensive linemen returning. Bob Davie did a great job getting into back-to-back bowl games in 2015 and 16. Had a really bad year last year. I expect another one this year, so another rebuilding year for the Lobos to try to get back to those seasons where they were contending in the division back in 15 and 16. Then you go over here to the West Division. Fresno State one of the biggest surprise teams, and not just the Mountain West, but the nation last year, going 1-11 in 2016. And then they bring in Jeff Tedford, first-year head coach, takes over this 1-11 team. We're expecting a major rebuilding year, and what does he do? He brings them to 10-4 and gets them to the Mountain West Championship game. So an amazing season for him, and they return plenty of starters this year. Namely quarterback Marcus McMaryion, a solid dual-threat quarterback there who was really just the game changer for Fresno State last year. They also returned their running back in Jordan Mims and their entire secondary. So this defense is going to be very strong as well. They just allowed 17.9 points per game last year. Pair that with a very strong secondary and a solid defensive line. Fresno State, more than likely the front runner in the West, but I do have San Diego State right behind them, tied for first place. The edge going to Fresno State because I had them beating the Aztecs in the regular season. San Diego State going 8-4 and 6-2. Had a great year last year, starting 6-0, including wins over Stanford and Arizona State. Went 10-3, so not a bad year, but they lose Rashad Penny. They've got to replace him. They were a huge run-oriented team with Donnell Pumphrey and Rashad Penny. Now they're both gone. They've got to figure out a way to replace that and keep that offensive production going. I got UNLV making a bowl game at 6-6. I love Armani Rogers at the quarterback position. They were close last year, 5-7 last year. They had 3 games decided by 1 possession. So they just win one of those games, they get to a bowl game. So they definitely have the talent to get there. And Tony Sanchez as head coach there is entering year 4. In the previous 3 years, they've gone from 3 wins to 4 wins to 5 wins. I think this year they do get to 6 wins. Nevada going 5-7 this year, at least that's in my opinion. Obviously have some work to do there. Need to stay healthy. That's going to be their key. But listen to this schedule. Listen to some of the teams they have to play. At Vanderbilt, Oregon State, at Toledo, Fresno State, Boise State, and San Diego State. So yes, obviously Mountain West opponents, and luckily they do host Fresno State, Boise State, and San Diego State. But I don't know if they're going to be able to beat any of them or maybe 1 or 2 of them. It's going to be a tough year for the Wolfpack, but I do have them at 5-7, so there's 1 upset away from getting into a bowl game. And then San Jose State and Hawaii, no surprise to see them rounding out the bottom 2, rounding out the cellar of the entire Mountain West, really. San Jose State's going to have a very strong defensive line. Last year, this went 2-11, so, they don't play 13 games this year, so I think they're going to stay about the same. Some people think they'll improve a little bit. I still think they have some work to do. And then Hawaii loses their quarterback in Drew Brown, loses some transfers, some players unexpectedly, 2 transfers, so I maybe would have had the Warriors going a little bit higher in the standing, or a little more wins, but with all those transfers, a lot of inexperience. I've got them at 3-10, finishing last in the Western Division, which means our Mountain West Championship game is going to be Boise State and Fresno State, a rematch from last year. Should be another great game. 2 great offenses going at it, and 2 fairly solid defenses, though. But the defense will once again be the key. I think Boise State owns that edge, so I think they win another Mountain West Championship game and a rematch over Fresno State, what should be another thrilling game. And like I said, Boise State, with the win over Fresno State, with a pretty decent strength of schedule, not great, but not bad. If they win the Mountain West, could once again be in a position to maybe make a New Year's Six bowl. So we'll just have to wait and find out. This is our Mountain West conference breakdown for the 2018 season. So as always, please go check us out on Twitter at Gridiron Expert, on Instagram at The Gridiron Expert, and always here on YouTube. Please go check us out, or please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.